What about the French Sangaris rapes?
Oleg, go ahead.
Your role in the UNDT filing.
Oleg.
We are looking at ways and means to provide them, for relatively cheap R&R trips. But of course, again, it's difficult because Bangui is a very poorly served airport. There's 1 or 2 planes a day, and we have large constraints on our own air assets. But anyway, we're looking at it very closely, and we'll see what we can do.
Can I just want to follow up on that? The Undersecretary General of Peacekeeping, Ladsous, had said in a press conference about sexual abuse and exploitation, had mentioned the need for R&R, rest and recreation trips by peacekeepers out of the country. This was on Friday. And he mentioned South Asian countries. He didn't say which ones. He said there are South Asian countries who rotate people out. I think he was trying to imply that if they're there too long, somehow this is the linkage that I heard. But in any case, I wanted to ask you, are you aware, does India rotate its peacekeepers more frequently than DPKO asks, or what do you think of it?
Taking into account the circumstances of each situation, we determine the policy of rotation. So in certain missions, the rotation is once every year. But in missions where the situation is more volatile, we do it more often.
Gotcha.
I think we are a professional peacekeeping country. We do not believe in all these things. We rotate troops when they are under pressure and volatile environment. The rest is up to those people who make the statements to explain what they mean by this. But our troops are professional troops, and I don't think that this should be looked at in terms of they are going in for a holiday or coming back. They are not part-time troops. They are fully professional, full-time troops.
I want to ask your response to this, and it's going back to this quote about the linkage between rapes and R&R. And the reason I'm asking you is that I put this question to the permanent representative of a major troop contributing country yesterday, and he said that his country from South Asia does not provide recreational or R&R trips, and he was sort of offended by it and said that the person who said it should explain it. Because the implication, he said, we're a professional army, we're not a part-time army, we have deployments and undeployments. So I guess what I'm saying is it seems like these comments that were made are not only problematic in the way that I've tried to say, but from a TCC perspective, what is the explanation? Which if it's not India, and I'll just say the name of the country, which South Asian countries was Mr. Ladsous referring to when sitting right there, he said South Asian countries do R&R flights, and that this would somehow reduce
Matthew,
rates?
I think I'm kind of done going back and forth on this. I think I've explained in as many words that I know in the English language to
Can you ask him which countries he was referring
underscore what Mr. Ladsous meant and what he was saying. And if I have more, I will share it with you.
The future of UN peace operations also depends on concerted action to rid UN peace operations of sexual exploitation and abuse.
As you didn't read it out, but I'm sure you've seen it. There was a MINUSCA Central African Republic mission press release yesterday about allegations of a peacekeeper pornographic film. Do you have any update on that?
No, I mean, I think it was released. The mission did put out a press release, said they were greatly concerned at rumors that in a town they had been. There were rumors that there was some rumors that a video was being circulated involving pornographic video involving. Possibly involving peacekeepers. They're looking at it. I think they've sent people to the town. I think it's to the credit of the mission that they are trying to be as proactive as possible to investigate what could just be a rumor or could be worse.
Sure. And this is
What about
the French Sangaris rapes?
Oleg, go ahead.
Your role in the
Oleg.
UNDT filing.
Oleg.
For two peacekeepers who are spending months on end in very, very difficult conditions, be it Kaga Bandoro, be it Bambari, be it Bria. I've gone to both since the last year. Comfort is rudimentary. And of course, there is no, how should I say, distraction. No possibility to do anything to get your mind, off those very difficult living conditions.
Turning to the Central African Republic, the UN mission in that country, MINUSCA, says they've received an allegation of sexual exploitation committed by one of its civilian staff on September 12th, 2015.
On the same topic.
Yes.
First, does this person have immunity, or would the UN waive immunity?
Immunity in criminal cases, in all criminal cases does not apply. And if a case were to go, a judicial case were to go forward, there would be no immunity for these actions, clearly as they're not part of that person's work.
When you say the person can't leave the country, is that by order of the UN won't facilitate them leaving, or the
We've asked
CAR
them to
authorities?
stay.
Well,
That's as far as I'm speaking on behalf of the UN.
and I guess I inevitably have to ask you this. Since Mr. Ladsous said that one of the reasons these abuses take place is that people don't leave the country and go for R&R elsewhere for recreation, it seems
I
not
think,
one, a
you know,
strange. One, can we
Ma-
say how long has the person been in the country?
Matthew, I think you're continue to gain great pleasure in distorting what Mr. Ladsous
You can read the
said.
transcript. He said.
Listen, I think you raised that issue yesterday. I
I'm
answered.
asking you
I
now.
answered clearly. This is a case, a possible case of sexual abuse, which is to be condemned and which will be pursued as far as we can, both internally and with the relevant judicial authorities.
How long has it been since the person left the country?
has-
The reason
it-
I ask is that he made the linkage. He's the one that brought up
Matthew,
people traveling
okay,
out.
I will say this. I will say this one last time. Civilian staff and and military staff work under two different regimes. So you're to compare soldiers that have been in country in very difficult circumstances for 3 years and a civilian staff is not to be comparable.
Something I wanted to ask you this on Friday, or Mr. Ladsous, but I want to ask you. He, from this podium, he said when in discussing rapes, he said that peacekeepers there don't have enough recreation, that they don't have enough comfort. He said that there's a looking into getting them flights to get fresh air. And although he did use the word, he's not excusing it. I'm going to tell, many people saw this as basically a statement that somehow linking the rapes to a lack of other distractions. In other words,
I think it's a complete misinterpretation of what Mr. Ladsous said. He stressed a number of times that there was no excuse.
Then what about the flights? Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm a little over-caffeinated today, so just bear with me. He repeatedly said that there was no excuse for rape. Okay. That is clear, that is UN policy, and I think that's everyone's policy. There is no excuse for rape. What he said, and talking about the case of one contingent that had been deployed in basically, a very hardship peacekeeping operation for more than 3 years, when troops are not rotated, when troops don't have an opportunity to be rotated out for R&R, and that's the truth for any armed forces, it creates the conditions where there can be all sorts of abuse or other things developing. It is not an excuse for rape, and I think it's clear that we have seen rape and horrendous sexual abuse by soldiers in many parts of the world. Some of them come from very rich armies, some come from very poor armies. There is no excuse. What he was saying, and I think people would agree with it, that 3 years for any contingent being stationed in very difficult circumstances is too long.
I guess what I want to say, a U.S. military, an admiral in the Pacific was fired for comments exactly like that, for which the person excused himself and apologized, but
listen,
he said
Matthew,
distraction, comfort.
Matthew, I read what you wrote. I'm aware of the other case. I think they're not comparable.
Where are the flights going? Where are the R&R flights going?
I will come back. Sidrais, yes.
In Central Africa. Some have been deployed since the times of the African Union, 18, 24 months. They have no opportunity to travel for rest and recreation because they don't get money. We do give the member states welfare money, but I'm not sure that in many cases the soldiers see the color of it. We are looking at ways and means to provide them, for relatively cheap R&R trips. But of course, again, it's difficult because Bangui is a very poorly served airport. There's 1 or 2 planes a day, and we have large constraints on our own air assets. But anyway, we're looking at it very closely, and we'll see what we can do. I will not deflower the subject, those incidents, if there are any other ones, as they come.
What do you mean? Firing the whistleblower, Anders Kompass. What was your role in Mr. Kompass? It's listed in the UNDT filings. It should be answered.
One question, please.
Shouldn't you answer that? No, it's.